Hello, record collecting people. It's Matt here, and hope everybody's having a good Memorial Day holiday weekend. Hope it is not as wretchedly hot where you are. It's just terrible here, and this is only May. But anyway, another week and another record review, as if I actually do this every week. But continuing with our Paul McCartney in order of release reviews, we come to February 2nd of 1993, Off the Ground, came out, did all right, got to number 5 in the UK, only got to number 17 in the US, and so, which really, I mean, by this point, I know these albums, when they come out by people like McCartney and Springsteen and so forth, they tend to go up the chart for a week or two because the fans, the old fans, go out, rush out and buy them, and then they just fall right off. So even though that's kind of deceiving on that chart placement, I'm thinking I'm not sure that this sold very well in the overall. And it's an album that probably most people, unless you're just a huge Beatle and McCartney fan, don't even remember or never knew of in the first place, which is a shame. But anyway, we'll start off, we'll show the copy. This is my vinyl copy, which is long out of print. These are hard to track down, pretty pricey nowadays. There's the front cover, and this one is autographed by Robbie McIntosh and Hamish Stewart, who I never met. I bought the album, and it was whoever had it before me got it autographed, I guess. I'm assuming those are genuine autographs, because I can't imagine for the life of me why anybody would fake a Robbie or a Hamish autograph. A Paul, maybe a Linda, but those two, I'm not sure who would even really want their autograph. I'm sure they're both very nice people, but anyway, here's the back cover. Not the most exciting cover. I don't. It's not off the ground and they're floating in the air. I get it, but not the greatest cover of Paul's albums. A lot of people say they don't like the white border. I've heard that. I don't have a problem with it so much as I just don't think it's that great of a cover, front or back. The gatefold's a little better. You get pictures of the band. So you get Paul, you get Linda. It's actually a pretty good picture of Linda there. I like that one. And you get the other guys in the band who, I don't know that any of them are still with him. There's good old Blair. Wonder what he's doing nowadays. So, nice gatefold. So-so cover. Inner sleeve is lyrics. And so yeah, this is not one of his better known albums, and it's one that got so-so reviews when it came out, I believe, and I don't know that many people are going to list this as one of his their favorite McCartney albums. I absolutely love this album. I think it's great, and I think it's I liked Flowers in the Dirt quite a bit. After having had a pretty rough 80s with some subpar albums, other than the McCartney 2 and Tug of War, he kind of bounced back with Flowers in the Dirt. It was a really good album, pretty good album, I'll say, with some really good songs on it. This is even better, I think, and so it's a strange, funny little album. It's not. There's really no reach out and grab you hit on it. There's no jet, there's no Band on the Run or Coming Up or With a Little Luck or anything like that. It's McCartney being the master of hooks and melody and catchy songs. That's kind of strange. He doesn't do that very often. He did it with one exception. He did it with Red Rose Speedway, which is, this is way better album than Red Rose Speedway, which I'm not a fan of, but Red Rose like this, the songs are not really, with the one exception on Red Rose, not really radio-friendly commercial pop hits, I don't think, for the most part. With Red Rose, that was a bad thing because it's just a bunch of boring, forgettable songs, and the god-awful My Love, which I will give did have hooks and a catchy melody, and once you heard it, you're going to remember it forever, unfortunately. But here, there's no real big, just grab you by the collar the first time you hear it type hit. It's an album that, for me, the first few times I heard it, I thought it was, nice, but sort of forgettable. But the songs on this album are very good, and they sneak up on you after a while and really get to you and become favorites, even though there's not like there were singles from this album, but there's not an obvious single. I'll put it that way. So this album is just a very not a bad song on it. I'll say start off with it's a very soothing, comfortable, relaxing album that sort of just makes you feel like sitting back in your favorite easy chair and little dog curled up asleep in your lap and reading a book, or just you know laying in bed on a cold winter day with your significant other and reading the newspaper and hanging out. It's just a good flow to it, and everything on here, in my opinion, is album cuts, not hits, not singles. But that's a good thing in this instance. Whereas everything, I guess, on Red Rose is album cuts too, but they're not very good. And I mean, there's a few moments on Red Rose. I'm not saying it's totally without merit, but enough of Red Rose. I've already covered that. So it's just a solid, nice flow to this album, and it may take a few listens to get into. And so, yeah, with that said, let's get into the songs here. Side one starts with Off the Ground, and that might have been a single. I forgot to write that down, but good opener. It's kind of an adult contemporary sound to this song, even though it does rock a little bit. But it's adult contemporary in a good way, really. It's got a nice sing-songy quality to it. Goes along. The sound is a bit technicolor, but in a low-key way, and majestic at the same time, sort of lo-fi and broad at the same time. It's got some nice guitar bits in it. Nice opener, nice song. I give it a 9. Second song is Looking for Changes, and I really should have made notes of which were the singles off this album, because I can't remember if that was one or not. But anyway, this is Paul talking about animal rights, which, however you fall on that issue, is kind of immaterial to the fact that the song's good. It's nice to see Paul worked up and passionate about something for once, as opposed to a lot of times he's just sort of making songs about not much of anything. And so it's nice to see that. It's a pretty good song. I give it a 7. It's maybe one of the weaker songs on the album, but even the weak songs on this album were really good. Number 3 is Hope of Deliverance, which I'm almost certain was a single. Maybe I'm wrong. Great pop song with a little bit of Latin flair and tinge to it. Just a nice, easy vibe that runs through the song. He's singing about hope for the future. Don't know if he's singing, this is about Linda, singing to Linda. Maybe he's singing to God. I don't know. Maybe he's, Paul, you never know what he's doing. He might just be writing about stuff and doesn't really mean anything. But it's a good message. It's a nice song. That's another thing on this album, is that the trademark silly McCartney lyrics and non sequiturs and silly lines that either are embarrassing or don't mean anything, they're kept to a minimum here. There's very little of that, so that's a welcome relief. The Hope of Deliverance, good song. I give it an 8. Now we go to Mistress and Maid, and this is another one of the leftover from the McCartney Elvis Costello collaboration of the previous album. And there's 2 of those songs on here too that were written with McCartney and Elvis. Mistress and Maid. This is love this song. This is probably my first or second favorite on the album, but it's just harkens back to textbook classic Costello sound of the 80s when he was really blowing and going, but it also has a Beatley sound. It's almost like could work. The Beatles could have done this as a bridge piece of music between the Magical Mystery Tour and the White Album eras, or between Magical Mystery Tour and Lady Madonna era. Really good song. One of the better of the McCartney Costello collaborations, I'd give that one a 10. Great song, one of the best on the album. The fifth song on side one is I Owe It All to You, which is just a really nice, just really direct, nice love song. It's not a whole lot to say about that, but this kind of a nice ballad type song. It gets an 8. Uh, Joe's always on me because I say I like ballads, but then I don't like My Love. Well, it's because I like ballads, and My Love is awful, and this is an example of a song that's a lot better than My Love and does. Anyway, it gets an 8. Sixth song, Biker Like an Icon, and again, I'm almost positive that was a single. That's the only thing I remember from this album, really. I think I probably had heard Hope of Deliverance somewhere, but I remember hearing Biker on the radio when this came out. Not very much, but 2 or 3 times. Um, Not a bad song. It's this may be the weakest on the album. I don't have anything against it. This isn't I don't like it, but it just doesn't do much for me. There's not much to it, and this was supposed to be the single from the album, and it's not a very strong single. I'll give it a 6. It's okay. It's it's actually okay, but it's just nothing more than that. Strange song. I guess the girl's stalking the biker, and the girl says she's going to run away, and her family says they could care less if she runs away, and the biker doesn't want her initially, but then she follows him to Hollywood and meets up with him, and then there's no trace of the girl, and the family's looking for her. So I don't know if the stalker girl and then the biker was a serial killer, or I don't know. That's kind of what I read into it, but it's not a whole lot of a song anyway. I'll give it a 6. But we go to side number 2, and things get a lot better immediately. Peace in the Neighborhood is, I think this is my favorite song on the album. It's just a really laid back, cool, soul music sounding piece of music, kind of a West Coast jazz vibe. I love the I felt boom, boom, peace in the neighborhood with the drums, little bit in there, snippet. Uh, it's kind of Summer of Love, but it's not really hippy dippy. I mean, it's hope for something better, but it's not in a naive way. Uh, Reminds me a lot of the music, early 70s soul music. A lot of early 70s soul music. It has that sound. Great, Paul's in a great voice. This should have been a single. Maybe it was. I don't know. This should have been a hit. This is probably the closest you get to a Reach Out and Grab You hit on this album that could have been a huge radio hit, I think. Kind of has the same vibe of the Vince Guaraldi, Charlie Brown Christmas and Halloween special music to it. And just a great song, great voice, great everything about this song is great, in other words. So that one gets a 10. Second song on side 2 is Golden Earth Girl, which is a nice little song. I'm going to give it an 8. It's one of those songs that seems very slight the first few times you hear it, but the more you listen, the more it grows on you. I love the sort of circular flute and organ that runs throughout it in parts. Song's got sort of a sleepy fairy tale, hypnotic quality to it. It's a nice song. It's not the best thing on the album, and it's but it's very good, and it gets an 8. We go back to Elvis Costello and Paul's collaborations with the final one on the album, The Lovers That Never Were. Really great vocals. Just the song just kind of builds and subsides and swells and subsides. Unfortunately, Elvis is not on this album, and it's a shame that he wasn't on some of these songs. But these are songs that they had written 5 or so years earlier that were just left over, and Paul went ahead and recorded. But The Lovers That Never Were, it gets a 9. It's another one of the really good Elvis-Paul collaborations. It's a shame that partnership didn't work out better. Would have been fun to see to have them work together a little more. But even though they liked each other, and I think they still do, they just kind of, when they tried to write together, from what I've heard. So that is not the song that is next. The song that is next on side 2 is Get Out of My Way, which is a fun, maybe the most rock and roll song on this album, even though what's the one, Looking for Changes is up there too. But this is a kind of a modern day for 1993 take on the rockabilly Sun Records sound. Some of it doesn't sound like that, but a lot of it does. Just a upbeat rock and roll song, and Paul's in great voice, got some great piano and old 50s rockabilly sounding guitar and music throughout it. I give it an 8. It's nothing major song-wise. It's just a good, fun, rollicking song, and it gets an 8. Number 5 on side 2 is Wine Dark Open Sea, which is just sort of a runny watercolor music piece of music, but it works really well. The outro, Joe last night was having a chat, and someone asked what's your favorite ending or outro on a Beatles song, and people were talking about that. This one has a wonderful, the last minute or two of the song, just really nice, laid back, and just relaxing, very substantial, fun, good music. Just really sounds good. So I'm going to give that an 8. Come On People is the song, number 6 song, sorry. Love the oh yeah part. It's just Paul having a dream of a better world where people get along and everything is hunky-dory, and wakes up in the world as it is now, which is unfortunately far from that. Kind of a summer of love vibe again, a little naive and hippy-dippy, but you can't knock the sentiment and the hope for that. It's a good thing. Wonderful song too. It gets a 9. Love that song. And the last song, which isn't listed but is on the album not listed, even though it is mentioned, well, it says, and remember to be cosmically conscious, but it's not listed in the song listing. So that's a song that Paul wrote back in '68, and he never, as far as I know, the Beatles didn't record it or didn't record it back then. It's just something he wrote and had around. He must have worked up something on guitar or something on tape recorder maybe. So he comes back and records it in 1993. A great piece of music, and it's a snippet of it. I think there's on B-side of a 45 you get the whole song, but sounds like 1968 Beatles, and you can't go wrong there. It's wonderful, and it's something that could have been on the White Album or Magical Mystery Tour. Obviously that one gets a 10. And so, as I've said on the last 3 or 4 albums, Paul's an odd duck. He does a lot of strange, weird things from time to time that the rest of us don't understand. One of the big things being he puts out these 45s with these B-sides that's almost guaranteeing that they're not going to get any radio play, or no one's going to listen to them other than hardcore Beatle fans that have to go out and buy everything the Beatles attach their names to. And I can say that because I'm guilty of that myself. But the general public's not going to do it. So again, you've got a lot of these B-sides and these maxi singles that were around back in the late 80s, early 90s that have a whole bunch of songs that are as good or better than the songs on this album, and the songs on this album are damn good. So that's going some. This could have been, should have been a double album, I think. I'm not going to talk about each of these songs individually other than just run through the list and give them my grades. There's a song called Style, Style. I give that a 9. There's a song called Sweet, Sweet Memories. I give that a 9. There's a goofy little weird thing called Soggy Noodle that lasts like 39 seconds, but it's fun. I'm going to give it an 8. Long Leather Coat gets an 8. Big Boys Bickering, you get to hear Paul cussing up a storm. Good song, I give it a 7. Kicked Around No More, give it a 7. I Can't Imagine, 7. Keep Coming Back to Love, great song, I give it a 10. Down to the River, I give it a 9. So that's 9 additional songs, which means this could have easily been a double album, or he could have released another album a year after it with just these songs. So, and he should have, because all of those are really good. Should have got, out there where people could hear them. Of course, by 1993, music had changed a lot, and chances of Paul McCartney getting a lot of radio play, even if he'd released, Band on the Run in 1993, it probably wouldn't have been a hit just because of the way that the music business and radio and all that had changed. Maybe it would have been, but anyway, suffice to say, this is I'm going to go 9.5 on this album. I really love it, and the crazy thing is, this is even if I was to do my top 5 or 10 favorite Paul McCartney solo albums, I'm not even sure this would make it in there, even though I really love this album, because there's a lot of albums that are better even than this that he's put out. But 9.5, I'm going to give it with a caveat of, if you not familiar with Paul solo work, other than, Band on the Run and With a Little Luck and stuff everybody knows, and you're thinking of checking some of it out, there's probably other albums to start with before this, but this is definitely one to get to eventually. And if you've heard this and kind of written it off as just an okay album, give it another shot, because it is one that, like I said, you listen to it first few times, several times, and it's kind of, yeah, but it grows on you, and the more I listen to it, the more I like it. And it's a shame that this is so little known. And from here on out, and again, from here on out, he's largely ignored his new music, which is a shame. But from here on out, after having had a pretty lousy 80s, things get better, and he puts out, from this album all the way to new, he puts out really strong albums, with maybe an exception or two. But some of the best stuff he's done was done after Tug of War, and so few people know about it, which, like I've said a bunch of times, is a shame. Anyway, 9.5 off the ground, lousy cover aside, great music inside, so check that one out. And next up will be the next album in order of release, which is Flamin' Pie, I think. See ya.